Okay, so sensitivity. I guess this is going to be my part two to my other video. Didn't think it was going to do as well as it did, and for the poor video quality, I apologize. I don't actually have a professional camera or anything, so I'm just going to go over some of this that I missed in my last video and kind of break it down into two parts here. Um, the first part would be more the beginner type, and then the second part obviously would be more advanced. And I don't really want to get into the advanced stuff too much because I feel like a lot of aiming guides and sensitivity guides and all that sort of thing. I feel like they overanalyze what you're trying to do, you know. So if you just make it as simple as possible, then I feel like you can kind of tweak it from there, right? So um, let's see. So the one of the a real big one of the I guess like a real big question that you would see a lot Reddit posts, sensitivity guides, all that stuff. You'd see, how many centimeters or inches is your 360? Is it 180 for the full mouse pad? Is it half of the mouse pad? 360, all that. I just say as a beginner, or if you're just moving from where you're just using your wrist like this, if this is pretty much all the movement that you really have, if you're lowering your sense and you're trying to do more of where you're moving the whole arm, right? I would say whatever mouse pad that you have, I just take it from one side to the other, and if it's a one, if any, probably a 180 would be fine, right there. A 360 would be fine as well. So like if you just take this and you move it over here, and on screen you do a full 360 or a 180, that's probably fine. I wouldn't worry about the 360 as much because most of the time when you're in games, you're practically using a 360 is it's really not practical. Usually it's because someone's behind you and you flick over, and then you're looking at somebody right behind you, and it's a 180, right? So as far as that, of course, all your basics, anywhere from 400 to 800 DPI is probably fine. I've seen people use higher. That's fine too. If you've always played on 1,000 DPI or 1,200 DPI, just leave it on that and adjust your sensitivity accordingly. Like I said, just one side of the mouse pad to the other, and you know, I wouldn't change too much on that. Um, if you have a smaller mouse pad, that's actually fine. I have this whole thing here as my mouse pad, which is kind of overkill, but just trying out some different things. So I actually at one time I had this big huge mouse pad that I'm using now, and I was having some problems kind of recentering. And what I mean by that is like when I had a big swipe, I wouldn't necessarily move my arm back to like maybe the center of where I need to be for my position to kind of have the whole mouse pad here. So I actually went back to a small mouse pad and kind of got more of a play style like this. So I could, where you pick up the mouse, move it, right? So even if you don't have a ginormous mouse pad, you don't need one. I mean, obviously, if you have one that's just one of those little bitty ones that comes out the right here, you probably need a bigger one. But if you don't have a ginormous one, you don't necessarily need it, and it'll probably help you to be able to get down, especially if you're newer, picking up the mouse and recentering it, going up here like this, all that sort of thing. I think in my last video I was talking about arm aiming and wrist aiming and all that sort of thing. I want to be clear. I think that especially if you're newer, you don't want to get too taken away with it being all arm or all wrist. So I think that there's a great player from the CS:GO scene, Simple. I think he just uses his wrist for the most part. But I think most people, if you're using your whole arm and then some of this, you know, I think that's kind of where you want to be with your sensitivity and all that sort of thing. Some of the more advanced stuff would be uh, grip styles, which I'm kind of a big believer in. If you've always gripped a mouse like this, like like a palm grip, that's what they call palm, like this, just kind of like naturally how you set it on your mouse. If you've always played that way, I probably wouldn't try and change it too much. There's some other grips. I think Lyric from United, I think he plays like fingertip, which is more, he's actually kind of like way off the mouse, kind of like this, somewhere around there. Not probably not perfect, but and then of course you got your claw style, which is more kind of like this. The claw style is it's really good for recoil because you can kind of just do like this to control recoil versus if you're palm you have to move your whole arm back a lot of the times. So you can experiment around with some of that stuff, but I wouldn't get too carried away with it. Like I said, if for me, I've always I picked up a mouse just like this, like 5 years ago or whenever it was, and that's exactly how I grip it now. Sure, if I were to try it a different way, who knows, I might be better, but I don't, I don't think that it would. I don't think that it would help me enough to erase all the muscle memory and stuff that I've learned, from playing that way. So, um, pros versus being practical. Um, copying and pasting other guys' sensitivity and stuff like that. I know a lot of people say that they really knock on that and say, well, you shouldn't just copy and paste other pros. You know, I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world either. If you want to try out, let's say you follow a pro player that his 360 is 17 centimeters, and you want to try another guy's that his 180 is 17 centimeters. I mean, I think that's be fine to kind of gauge more of what kind of player you are. I mean, you might put it on there and say, oh, well, this is way too slow or this is way too high, something like that. Um, aim's not everything. I think a lot of pro players and streamers, uh, YouTube compilations, stuff like that. I think a lot of the times some of those players will get away with bad play because they hit every shot. So it's really it's nice. Like aim is nice, of course. Of course, we all want to be aimbots, but practically, maybe you know aim isn't everything. You might have fried the first guy that you were right in front of you, but you did positioned yourself in a bad spot where his teammate killed you. So it's just practical stuff like that that you don't want to get too carried away with aim, I guess, really. you know Aiming is more once you kind of figure out where your sensitivity is generally at from there. I feel like a lot of people just overlook the fact that aiming is your mouse goes where your eyes are looking for the most part. And a lot of people will ask, do you look at your crosshairs or do you look at where you're aiming at? Or I sometimes I feel like it's a little bit of both, but I'd say predominantly, especially in some of the older Call of Duty matches I used to play, like in game battles, search and destroy, stuff like that. When it was like a 1v2, round 11, stuff like that. Um, I found myself when it came to aiming, I wasn't looking at anything else but the actual player. And and I noticed I only did that when it was a lot of clutch situations, and most of the time it was, and when I would clutch up on those situations, it would be, and I mean, like my focus was just right there, right there on the player, wherever they move, that's where my mouse and recoil and all that stuff, it just kind of went away, and that's a lot of that's from just playing where it's just natural, where you're just you're moving down, you're taking care of your recoil and all that stuff. But so I think personally, I think it's better as far as when you aim, just to look at what you're aiming at, not your crosshairs or any of that other stuff. Um, that might be some personal preference, but I just think for me, when I notice my shot is off, I'm either looking at the crosshairs, or I'm looking back and forth between the crosshair and the what I'm aiming at. So I'm gonna bring up a motorcycle analogy on this one. As when I was first learning how to ride a motorcycle, um, the instructor would say that the hardest part for whenever uh, you would start riding is turns. And so when you would turn, when you go into your turn, what beginner motorcyclists would do is they wouldn't turn their head and look through the turn. They wouldn't turn their head all the way through the turn to see what they're looking at, of where they're going. And because the motorcycle feels weird, and you feel like you're gonna, like you're just gonna go off. You're not used to the angle and all that stuff. So I think for me, I think that the analogy works here is that you want your crosshairs to go what you're looking at, right? And so naturally, where your eyes go is most likely, once you get your sensitivity figured out a little bit, doesn't have to be perfect, but for the most part, your aim's going to go where your eyes are. So that's my kind of just an overarching oversimplification of aim. Um, I think if you've played on PC enough, I, I think that if you were to go into your settings and maybe half your sensitivity of what it is right now, or if I was to double it, I don't think that my KD would change that much. I think that my accuracy would suck, but I don't think that my actual KD would change that much, because aiming is definitely not everything. So uh, just some things that I've kind of learned over the years that kind of helped me. Hopefully they help you. This isn't the most uh, in-depth guide, but I don't want to. I think when I was trying to look for my sensitivity and find settings that I was comfortable with, I think I just did way too much, you know. And I should have just gotten on here and just said, okay, this is a 180 for my full mouse pad, and just bam, gone from there, or hey, this is a 360, and stuck with that, and it's gone from there, you know. I wouldn't over analyze it, this. Well, maybe I'm over analyzing it now, but anyways, that's it. Thanks.